I'm Siobhan Keenan.
I'm Olivia Webb.
And I'm Nathan Johnson.
And today we will be discussing the Electoral College.
Our question is, should the United States continue to use the Electoral College in presidential elections? Our answer to this question is no. This should not continue to be used.
So what is the Electoral College? The Electoral College was formed at the 1787 Constitutional Convention after a heated debate about how to decide the next president. Everyone wanted George Washington to be the first, but after he retired, no one knew what to do. Some wanted Congress to decide, and some wanted the national popular vote to decide. This was their compromise. So how does it work? Each state gets a number of electoral votes based on its population. There are 538 total votes, which is the sum of 100 senators, 2 per state, 435 representatives, plus another 3 for the District of Columbia. A candidate needs 270 electoral votes to win the presidency.
Gene Green, a U.S. congressman, states, the Electoral College was necessary when communications were poor, literacy was low, and voters lacked information about out-of-state figures, which is clearly no longer the case. The Electoral College was created 230 years ago when there were only 13 states. And now, with 50 states and over 319 million people, the system no longer works.
Some problems with this system include electors. Electors are the biggest problem, one of the biggest problems with this system. They are oftentimes biased towards the political party they are associated with. They vote for their party and not necessarily the best candidate. The electors are chosen on a winner-takes-all system in all states but Maine and Nebraska. The winner-takes-all system means that if, in a given state, 51% vote for candidate A and 49% vote for candidate B, all of the electoral votes go to candidate A with 51%. This means that slim margins don't really matter. An elector pledges a vote to a candidate, pretty much always one that the political party they're associated with. And they're supposed to vote for the best candidate, but they don't really do that because an electoral vote is meant as a safety net for the presidency to stop the wrong person from getting in, but it doesn't always do that because the electors just want someone with the party they're associated with to be the president.
In addition, as Olivia was saying, electors pledge their votes and they can act on their own. Because of this, 40% of the U.S. population opts out of voting. In addition, another reason 40% of the population opts out of voting is because there's no voter incentive. Regardless of how many people vote in a state, that state is given a set amount of electors. Whether 10, 20, or 1 billion people vote, that state will receive the same amount of electoral votes.
Examining this political cartoon by Stuart Carlson, a map of the U.S. as viewed by presidential candidates, you can see that states such as Ohio, Virginia, Florida, Wisconsin, and Colorado are disproportionately bigger than the rest. These are states that are crucial in presidential elections because they are swing states, also known as battleground states. Swing states are states that don't always vote one way.
Candidates often base their campaign strategies off these 10 states, and they often ignore the other 40 because they hit the swing states like Florida, but they'll ignore other states such as New York because they know exactly what that state's going to vote for.
This is unethical because only a handful of states really decide the election, and like Nathan said, pretty much all the other states are just ignored on the campaign trail.
A prime example of this was Bush versus Gore. In the election of 2000, it all came down to the state of Florida. The margin was so small that the state of Florida called for a manual recount of the presidential ballots. The Supreme Court reversed this request, and a 5-4 vote decided that Florida's 25 electoral votes and effectively the presidency would go to George W. Bush. This caused protests nationwide and is a prime example of the Electoral College failing to listen to the will of the American people. Alexander Hamilton described the Electoral College in number 68 of the Federalist Papers. He says that if the manner of it be not perfect, it is at least excellent. He is speaking to the fact that the Electoral College is not flawless, but it works pretty well.
One of the solutions could be the switching alone to the popular vote. A pro to this is that the winner will always receive the majority of the votes. However, campaign trails will still hit the larger states, such as California and Texas, but ignore the smaller states.
Another suggestion was Congress just deciding the next president. This has been a suggestion since the 1787 Constitutional Convention. Granted, Congress would most likely be qualified to pick a competent president. However, party dominance of Congress would result in the same party having the presidency over and over again, and the voice of the American people would be ignored.
A last solution we have researched is proportional representation, which is currently in effect in Maine and Nebraska, as I said earlier. The pros to this is that the votes would be more proportional to the popular vote, which is what the people are actually saying. But a con to this is that the rounding with the votes may not end up to be 100 in the end, and so the voting would be really weird, and you can't give half a vote to a candidate. You can't cut a person in half.
So the solution we are putting forward is proportional representation with a few modifications. One such modification we are suggesting is regulation of campaign trails, with restrictions on how much time, money, and ads you can have in one state. This will not necessarily get rid of the swing state issue, but it might even out state voter turnout and therefore importance of states to the candidates.
In addition, we will add voter incentive by basing the amount of electors in each state based off the voting population, not the population alone.
And another modification we would make is possibly increasing the electoral body itself, so then there would be more electors per state, but still proportional to what we have now, so then more votes could be split and given to the correct candidate.
We have come to the conclusion that in the past 230 years, America has changed. As we grow and change as a nation, our political systems should not remain stagnant. They should grow and change with us. Thank you.
Okay, just a couple questions. Nathan, how did the group decide to include Olivia's perspective lens or conclusions into the overall presentation?
In her paper, she talked a lot about faithless electors and pledged votes, and in one of our slides, she talked about pledged votes and faithless electors and how it was unethical. She was the ethical lens.
Thank you. Siobhan, reflecting on your colleagues' work, which one had the greatest impact on your overall understanding of the problem your group identified?
I think Olivia's had the most to help me understand it, because I kind of knew how the Electoral College worked, but I didn't know that it was such an unethical process. So her ethical lens really helped me understand that it needs to be changed.
Thank you. And last, Olivia, in what way did you improve your ability to work with a group as a result of this project?
I improved my ability to work with a group with this project when I'm tripping over my words. I increased my communication skills, and with our modified solution at the end, we had to talk a lot about that, and we built off of each other's ideas, and I think that was really good, and it really helped me